So with that, I am going to introduce Larry Peltz. If you just bear with me just 1 second. And I'm adding Larry to our stream. And hi, Larry.
Hey there, Adam.
I just want to tell everybody a little bit about Larry and what Larry will be speaking about. And Larry is somebody I met in New England who is awfully impressive to me and who I witnessed as being an amazing guide of people through the, through the pandemic. And we talked a little bit about the world of design, and I told him about it, and he had some reactions, including that he believed that, these times during the pandemic for anyone, including designers, are certainly different in destabilizing ways, some ways illuminating, some ways they're very freeing, and some ways frightening, in both ourselves and our clients that we work with as designers. And he thought there was an opportunity to learn to relate to some of the stresses that come up during these periods and some of the emotions, and to tap into our own creativity and authenticity around some of this data that is very personal to us. Larry comes from a background that is not interior design. He's a psychiatrist, and he lives in Lincoln, Massachusetts, which is the town next to me. He hails out of a town that was also next to me, which is Queens, New York. I come from Brooklyn, New York. And I don't know, maybe that's one of the reasons I've been interested in what Larry's doing. But he's been on the faculty of the Harvard Medical School, of Boston University School of Medicine. He's trained as a mindfulness teacher at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And he worked for 2 years, interestingly enough, which was my first exposure to his work. Not that I was needing it, but that I was curious about him, in the UMass Prison Project. And he wrote an amazing book called The Mindful Path to Addiction Recovery. Not exactly what we'll be talking about here, but I think I'm going to turn it over to Larry here. And Larry, don't worry about the time, even though that you were 3 minutes tardy, but we won't hold you to that. I'm just going to add your presentation, and I'm going to pop off, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay, Larry, I'm here if you need me.
All right. The only question is, I just want to get into my presenter view, which I'm not in. Let's see, how do I do that? Let's see. Oh, yeah, you all will see that I'm not the greatest technologically, so all right, I'm just gonna go, and I will manage it. Okay, so anyway, it's really good to be with you guys. The talk is called, as you can see, Interior Design in the Pandemic, Dancing with Uncertainty, Doubt, and Possibility, right? And I think dancing is a great metaphor for living. When you learn a dance, you could learn the waltz, or you could learn the jitterbug. There are certain prescribed steps you can do the dance and get through it. However, if you keep going at a deeper level, you can improvise, jam with it, make it your own in a new way. And people can become quite sophisticated. However, sometimes the dance changes and the old steps in unexpected ways, right? And the old steps don't seem to work or match the situation. I think this is part of what we're up against here in the pandemic and how it's affected everyone. So I hope to teach you some ways here to slow down and look at experience with new eyes, right? So that then you can begin to see what in the world is this new dance, right? And how can I find my own groove within it, right? So as Adam says, I'm a psychiatrist, nearly 40 years doing it. I've worked a lot with addiction, helped people with habits, and a number of other things. Addiction is also a metaphor that we all share. You know, we all have habits, some not so good, and we need to learn to work with those. Prison is also a metaphor. You know, we create our own. You may have noticed we create our own prisons, and the guys that I worked with, they weren't all open to what I was teaching, but what I noticed was that seeing is believing. Right? And when they would get results, tension would reduce from their bodies, etc. Then they would be convinced. And I expect the same of you. So I'm going to, over the course of this talk, give certain opportunities to be experiential, right? To actually have an experience. And hopefully you'll try some of those out. Now, this would be the time that I might say, how many people have heard of mindfulness? I mean, these days, a lot of people have, many people have. And then I might say, how many have tried it? And then how many people have a meditation practice, right? So I'm sure there's some in each category, but I don't know. So I'm going to really talk to the people who haven't done this and really know very little about it, and invite you to try some things that may be of value. All right. Okay, so all right. So in terms of thinking about this whole subject, as Adam says, I'm not a designer, but I can feel into it some. I might not always be right, but I have some idea. And also, I am an influencer. Also, I'm actually going to leave you with a question now. What am I doing? What am I influencing, or what am I selling? I am in sales, actually. And I'm going to leave you with the question, what am I selling? I'll ask you at the end. You may know, or you may not, but we can talk about that. So, but in terms of this field that you're in, I've broken it down best I can through a number of conversations with people into 3 steps. And they are to know yourself, and then to be true to yourself. This is actually the beginning of getting your own dance. What are your steps? Because everyone has each golfer has their own swing, and each singer has their own style, right? And so same for every designer, right? Have your own way. And what are your steps? Then this next step is once you know yourself, you can be more flexible, more adaptive, and be more creative, and find your own go deeper into your own unique path and voice. And then you're really in a position to align your messaging with your values and purpose, and then attract followers who are interested in that. You know, I've noticed that it saves a lot of time and energy to be yourself at work. And then as an influencer, you don't have to hit a home run. You've just got people that are interested in you, and this saves a lot of energy. Okay, so here's a history of the universe in 30 or 60 seconds, okay? This is how we got here. The universe began in about 14 billion years ago, right? This is what science says based on their measurements. And something happened, and all these celestial bodies came into place. And then about 4.5 to 6 billion years ago, there was a disk, apparently a big disk of rock and ice and energy that became the solar system, right? Quite amazing, really. The sun and the planets. And then also incredibly amazing is that somehow our planet is in position to receive, to support life. The rays of the sun hit the earth, rock and dirt, carbon dioxide, water, and plants began to grow, and animals began to evolve that ate those plants, and many, many life forms evolved, including roughly, that's 3.5 billion years ago, and then about 1.5 billion years ago, viruses, right? Parasites. That viruses are fascinating organisms. They have a way, you see those little spikes on them, they have a way of tricking the cell. Cells have security. They don't let you right in. But viruses have a way of tricking the cell, getting a secret handshake going. They get in the cell, they multiply, and they overwhelm the cell. Now, if that just went on and on, this wouldn't work. So So animals would just be overwhelmed. But simultaneously, they developed immune systems. So there are cells, immune cells, there are antibodies, strips of DNA and RNA. It's like espionage. They're floating around and they're like Legos. They're changing the configuration of the virus so that they don't let it in the cell. So and often we can just get through. We can play through a cold, no problem. Turns out in the pandemic, hasn't worked very well, and many immune systems have been overwhelmed. So here we are trying to right our ship with vaccines, with masking, with social distancing, right? Now, our species has only been around about 200,000 years, so a lot less than viruses. Okay, now, this is a crisis, and in Chinese, Wei Ji, right? It's two characters, you can see them there. Wei means danger or to endanger, and Ji means a crucial point where something begins to change. Some people say that Ji means opportunity, but it doesn't. That's too facile. In fact, when we're in danger, the first thing we don't say, oh my God, what's my opportunity here? No, generally we freak out, go into fight and flight, and shut down various things, right? So now, but what I'm going to invite you to experience is actually a way to actualize what Albert Einstein says, in every crisis lies a great opportunity, okay? But in order to do that, we need to relate to this in a different way. So let's begin. I'm going to invite you, and I say many people have not ever practiced this before, and it may seem a little strange, but it's very simple and quick. So I'm inviting you to just note where you're sitting. Just notice your body. Direct your attention to your body, and you might notice your feet on the floor. You might notice your butt in the seat, your sitting bones, your back, your hands and arms. So those are your touch points, your contact points. There are also some other touch points around your mouth, teeth, lips, tongue, etc. So you can just go ahead and notice those. Very simple. And you'll also be able to notice that you're breathing. You can just allow the breath to flow, and you don't really have to do much, just happens. Okay, that's fine. So all right, so everyone can just come back, and you might notice, I didn't ask you to notice how you felt at the beginning, but you might notice, or what do you notice, and or do you notice anything different? Some
Larry,
people, yes.
I noticed something different.
Yes, what's that? What did you see, Adam?
I don't, if some other people have mentioned anything on the other platform, they'll get fed here. But in the meantime, it was like an amazing peacefulness overcame me, amazing calm.
Yeah. So something settled there.
Yeah.
Now that's one of the themes. Sometimes people will notice how much they're thinking. Sometimes they'll be amazed that they weren't thinking. They might notice things in the body that are unpleasant that they hadn't been noticing, because we tend to live in our heads a lot. So anyway, so this is an invitation, and Adam's experience is one of the themes and one of the things that tends to happen. And I think if you practice, you actually will get that more often, right? Things will start to settle. It's a little like if you had a jar full of water and sand and you shook it all up, right? You would see a cloud, right? Like mud, right? And if you set it down on the table, it would clear, right? And that's how we are. If we allow it, if we allow ourselves, set the conditions. A lot of what we're talking about are conditions here, and how those conditions affect us, and how we can begin to relate to them differently. So now, one of the themes here is what's going on out there and what's going on in here. There are things that are impacting us out there, and then we have an experience. So the pandemic has externals and internals. So here's Times Square in Midtown Manhattan on a beautiful day. and no one is in the street. No cars, cabs, buses, nothing. How in the world did that happen? Well, conditions. The pandemic was raging in New York, and New Yorkers started to cooperate and say, yeah, we got to get off the street. So this is a stunning photo. So everything shuts down, businesses, entertainment, gatherings, there's less traffic, people aren't traveling, people are more alone. And there's a lot of online presence. I mean, some of this is here to stay. Adam spoke about this, that online presence on shopping is here to stay at a new level, Zoom meetings, etc. Okay. Now, what's going on inside? Now, we can't really know what this young woman is experiencing, but this is another invitation to check in with your own experience. So I invite you to do that. You might, again, notice your touch points in a very simple way. Come to the body, and then just, if you like to close your eyes, just noticing what's your experience. And it could be quiet, it could be noisy, you could have a sense of peace or anxiety, relaxation or tension. It's not right or wrong. It's going to change. So just noticing what your mind is like. Are you feeling open and optimistic, or are you feeling doubtful and fearful? Just noticing without judgment, best you can. Okay, and so it turns out consumers are us, right? They're the same species. Everything's slowing down, and guess what? They notice there's change, there's a lot of uncertainty and fear, right? And I also learned this from Adam, that consumers are wishing more for connection and meaning in their lives. It makes sense, doesn't it? And so as an influencer, as a brand, there may be some different ways that you need to connect with them in order to optimize that connection. And this is a question to consider. You can I think you can see where I'm going. And that is there a relationship between self-knowing, self-trust, self-compassion, and learning how to connect with customers in new ways? I mean, I would never refer someone for therapy to a therapist who hadn't had treatment, right? We need to know ourselves if we're going to help others, I think. So this is an invitation. And as I said before, there's two things, well, I don't know if I said it. There's two things we can control. And that is where we direct our attention and what we do or say. We can't control our thoughts. We can't control our feelings. We can't control the weather. We can't control the pandemic. We can't control what politicians do or say. I mean, there's a very long list of what we can't control. These are two things that we can control. And so I'll come back to this. We can keep this in mind as we go. Okay, so let's again. This is a variation of the touch points exercise. This is called centered presence. I learned this from a book. I gave the reference on the slide, Retooling on the Run. Real Change for Leaders with No Time. Stuart Heller and David Surrender. Yeah, and indeed, his name is Surrender. So these are 4 steps. Again, notice your feet. Again, come to the body best you can. You might notice your feet, then your hands, then your head and your spine, and then your breath. And once again, your feet, your hands, your head, and your breath. You might just notice how that's not much, but you might notice how you're different from that if you are. And the other invitation is, you can do this throughout my talk. It may seem like 2 things. I'm paying attention to 2 things, but it's actually, and you have to see this for yourself, doing this exercise actually, yeah, there's a little bit of your attention on it, maybe 2% of your attention, but it actually keeps you present with whatever you're doing. And if you're eating or drinking coffee, just do that. Just notice the experience of chewing, tasting, swallowing, etc. All right. Okay, now I want to say a little bit about design and art and the creative process to link up to what you all are doing. This quote is from H.W. Jansen, who wrote the art history book that I studied when I was in college. And he says, for a work to be called art, it requires 3 elements. And see if you think this is right. He said a tradition, 2, a leap of imagination, and 3, an audience. All right. So if you all are designing, have a design project, I suspect you were trained as a designer. There's chops, there's a tradition, there's ways of working that you've learned, or steps, you might call them dance steps. But then when you have a project, you have an idea. It's maybe something that you've been thinking about or something that resonates with this person that you're working with, your audience. Okay, and so there's a couple, I have a couple of paintings up there, one by Paul Cézanne and one by Pablo Picasso. Now in the history of art, I'm going to have to restrain myself a little bit. During the Renaissance, the 15th and 16th centuries, a system evolved, as many of you know, called one-point perspective. There was a vanishing point where where everything went to that point, and the landscape would fade into the distance and would look very natural. So if you saw a landscape or if you saw a portrait, it was like you were looking through a window at that person or that scene, right? Now, obviously there were many styles over the next 3 centuries, but the Impressionists began to play with this in new ways. Their landscapes still looked like landscapes with vanishing points, but the Impressionists were like mindfulness practitioners. They were very interested in light and color and momentariness. They would paint in nature. Claude Monet did many paintings of the Rouen Cathedral in France at different times of the day. Now the post-Impressionists, of which Cézanne is a member, well, they were contemporary, but they did something different. Cézanne, Seurat, Van Gogh, Gauguin, they did something different. That is, you can see from this painting, now there is a man there, you can recognize it as a man, but it doesn't quite look like you're looking through a window at somebody that you would notice as you would see a photograph. You can see in his forehead, there are these planes of color move across the forehead under the eye, and then you might notice that his hair, the background doesn't recede. In fact, his hair seems to merge with the background. The background is painted very boldly, and it comes up toward the picture plane right in the front. So there's this real tension between 2 and 3 dimensions. There's a person, there's a landscape, but it's also all on the surface in a way, like a decorative pattern. That was new. Now, 25 years later, in 1910, Picasso, this is a cubist painting, analytic cubism. There's also a man with a beard. You can recognize that this is a man, and you can see some depth in the face. But if you look more closely, you'll see it's been analyzed into these cubic elements. And the background is totally connected with that same pattern. So everything comes up into the surface. So say Picasso could not have done what he did had Cézanne not done what he did 25 years earlier, right? And I'm reminded of the quote from Rachel Shingleton, who's an influencer. I can't remember the brand she was speaking of, but she referred to it as individualistic interiors that stand the test of time. I think she's hinting at the same thing. That is, there's a tradition and there's a leap of imagination. Okay, so interior design is a metaphor in a way. It's a thing, right? It's a field, but it's also a metaphor, and it could be called a misnomer because interior design is inside, but it's also out there, right? So I just broke this down in my own limited way of the internals and externals of what you do, right? So you'll, forgive me if I don't get it all, but as I said before, you guys learn a method, you learn some chops, you learn some ways of working, but then you have ideas, or what you might call a leap of imagination going on inside of you. And then you have in mind materials, objects, etc. And then these impact the senses. Visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory. If you want to sell a house, so stage a house, it's not a bad idea to bake cookies, right? Fill the house with chocolate chip cookies, even eat them, right? So, and then your ideas are executed in a space. And that has further impact on the senses as well as on the emotions. Sense of pleasure, sense of calm. Oh, piques your interest, excitement, balance, or maybe even feeling unsettled. And then within that project, you see what you did, you might modify it and learn from what you did, modify it, and then take that learning forward into your next project. All right, so here's Kelly Worsler. Many of you know who she is. I did not. I was just Googling around and found her. And I want to play a little video, which, again, some of you may have seen. Let me see if I can get this to work here. Uh-oh. Adam, oh, wait a minute. No, no, it's not working. No, this should activate a hyperlink. For some reason, let me see.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, there we go.
We're not seeing it on the screen, Larry. It's just.
Your home.
Oh, you're not. Okay, wait a minute.
Of who you are as a person.
Just a minute.
So much of it's your design.
All right, so.
Yeah, we're not seeing it on the screen because I think Brent would have to go in and share that screen, and then we would have to create. And click on that and see what happens.
Well, see, if I click on this, let's see.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about what the video was, or I don't know that we're going to be able to get that get that up unless Brent is in and can figure something out for you.
All right. Okay. All right. That may not work. Okay. So yeah. So.
Hi guys. Seems like we lost Larry. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Maybe Brent can go in and get him. In the meantime, I want to share a little bit more information with you. So if you'll just give me a second, I will add this to the stream, and then Brent can bring Larry back when he is back. Sorry about that. Kind of stuff happens, I guess. So one of the reasons that I shared with you before, kind of weird going from a mindfulness talk into do you have influence, but one of the things that I wanted to share with you is a little test of my own that I always ask people who wonder if they have influence. And these are kind of the elements to think about. Basically, when you're thinking about influence, oh, is Larry back? Okay, Larry's back. I'm just gonna bail.
All right. So we're not going to see it.
Okay.
All right.
we established that.
All right. Fine. All right. Anyway, she's pitching her interior design class. It's a great video. And so you guys can look at it on your own. She's fabulous. I think she has a lot of power. She's very clear and organized. She's clearly the boss. And she also is inspiring, and she's also, for her students, aspiring to possibility, curiosity, finding your own voice, your own style, playing, risking, and trusting. That if you follow these methods and utilize what you're learning about color and light and the process, that you will be in a better position to do this work. All right. Now, okay. Now, she also has on her website what she calls a client intake, which I suspect you're familiar with. Sales is listening. So you're listening. You want to find out what's the client's vision. How do they want to live in the space? What do they like or enjoy? What's the client's program? Okay. So I'd like to do a little exercise with you all where we work with this for your own self-intake. Now, this is the invitation. In the pandemic, there have been many challenges, right? So I'm going to ask you to bring to mind, I'll go through the questions and you can allow this to percolate a little bit, something that's problematic for you, all right? A challenge or a problem. And it could be a challenge in the design process. It could be a challenge with people in some way. It could be a challenge financially, or it could be a challenge in your personal life, okay? Then the second question is, how's that a problem for you, right? So, because some people could have the same problem, but it would affect them differently, right? The third question is, what's missing? And what that means is a strength or characteristic that if you had it or had more of it, you still would have a problem, but you would be in a better position to deal with it, okay? Some people say, oh, if I had more confidence, or if I had more, if I didn't judge myself so much, or if I was more daring, more adventurous, you know, whatever it is. Okay. So don't worry about that for now. So then the next question is, what do you like, and I'll guide you through this. What do you enjoy? What are you grateful for? What do you, what gives you comfort? What's a strength of the work of you that you enjoy about your work, right? And then what do you like about it? Okay, so let's take you through this, and I would say find a comfortable position, and you might start with grounding in the body like we did before, noticing your points of contact, and the invitation is to go inside and just, you know, reflecting on this challenge, you know, this crisis where this toxic thing happened, this infection that locked everything down, changed the way you worked, atrophied certain skills, had you had to adapt to other things. Very, very challenging. And so so a challenge may come to mind, something that you've had to struggle with, and or a problem, right? And then, so as you reflect on that, you might ask yourself, yeah, how is that a problem for me? Right? How does that affect sort of a movie unfolding where you, yes, I have the problem with this, but then you see, oh yeah, that's how it's manifesting. Okay. And then you might ask yourself, what's missing, right? What's my strength? What's my, this strength or characteristic that if I had more of it, I would be better somehow. And don't struggle with that one. If you don't know, that's fine. Let's just go on to the next. Something you like. Anything. It could be, I like to be in the garden. I like to ride my bike. I like to watch movies with my family. I like to sit in the backyard and read. Any number of things. Or what do you like about your work? What do you particularly enjoy about being a designer, being a blogger, being a brand, being an influencer? What do you particularly love about that? And what do you like about that strength or that thing you enjoy or are grateful for? Just go ahead and reflect on that and allow yourself to allow the experience to settle. And likely, you'll have some kind of a positive experience. It could be just a sense of calm, or sense of being grounded, a sense of some joy. It might be subtle, but just noticing, sense of power, confidence, whatever. And locate that in the body. Once you identify it, just locate it and just take a moment to live in the experience. Just notice it, just be with it, just connect with it. You might call it a resource. It's a resource that's in you. Okay. And then from that place of feeling strong, resourced, in pleasure, whatever it is, go back to your problem. Notice your problem from that place. And notice what do you notice? How is it different? It may be that the problem's not much different, and you feel different, but you feel different. Or maybe you're seeing the problem differently. I don't know. So let's just come back gradually and we may get some reactions. If people are interested to give their reaction in the chat, we can take them up maybe a bit later. And let's just go on. Right. So just a few nuts and bolts. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but these are some of the nuts and bolts of experience. Stress is a response of the organism that is to any pressure or demand, right? It's a mind-body experience. It's an experience. Stressors are what's happening out there, right? So if you, if there's more work to do and too much work to do and not enough time, there's an experience around that, right? And you can feel it in your body, right? If somebody lets you down, there's an experience around that. If there's a sudden change in the marketplace, you'll have an experience, right? Okay, and that's stress. Those are stressors, but stress is the experience. Emotions are related. They're neurochemical changes that we have a story about. So if you're disappointed, there may be a story like, this always happens to me. Right now but if you slow down, you'll see, oh, I'm disappointed. Right? If you're afraid, you might think, oh no, we're in trouble, or you might think this isn't fair. But if you slow down, you will see that you're disappointed, you're afraid, you're angry, and these situations arise, these emotions arise, they peak, and they die off. And this is really important information that we'll come back to as we talk about mindfulness practice. Now, habits, we're not going to have a lot of time to get into this. Maybe there'll be questions about it, but they're just repetitive patterns of thought or behavior that help us to manage stress. They're good and they're not good, both. I mean, weightlifting may seem good and eating a cupcake not good, but they both have pluses and minuses. I personally have hurt myself lifting weights, so it can be... and a cupcake is celebratory. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Too many of them aren't so good. But anyway, so this may be something that we get back to. So mindfulness is, here's a definition, being aware of our experience, of the experience of our mind-body, right? So there's something comes into the mind-body, and there's 6 sense, this is Buddhist psychology now, 6 sense doors. The 5 senses we mentioned before, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and the body, and thinking, those 6. And then we have a reaction, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Okay? And this is happening in every moment. This is the psychology of the present moment. It's happened over the course of my talk. It will continue to happen. Positive hits, negative hits, neutral hits. And then the 4th is acceptance, right? How do we accept this? Well, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean you like it, right? But it may mean, and hopefully we'll have time for a brief exercise that captures this. It means that you make space for it, that you kind of allow it to be just as it is without reacting, right? So the steps to mindfulness, stopping, seeing, stop and look, then you'll understand something, and then you can choose. That means that's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is like a reflex. Responding is more like a choice, right? It can happen very quickly, spontaneous, right? Spontaneous, it's got that little spont in there. You're responding as opposed to impulsive, which is more of a reaction, right? So this is a little exercise that you can try on your own. I'll just go through it quickly. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. You can try this on your own, and I particularly like to do it when I walk. So this is also another advertisement for mindful walking, to just notice your feet, notice your arms swinging, notice the motion, notice the breeze, the sun, and notice your senses. Come to your senses in this way. It's really quite a beautiful practice. And in the pandemic, probably you are taking walks. So this is a real opportunity to drop into the body in a new way and into your experience. All right. So let's just do, I think we maybe have time for one more thing, and I'd like you to experience this. So this is called making space. I call this exercise making space, and it has 4 steps. Notice an experience. An experience can be stress, tension, anxiety, discomfort, pain, joy, calm, balance, any number of possible experiences. So as I'm talking, likely you will notice, what are you experiencing now? Then breathe into it. Then the third is, can I accept or make space for this? Yes or no. It could be no, and we'll talk about that. And then the fourth is, can I allow this experience to just be as it is without trying to change it? All right. So let's try this again. Come to your posture, however you are, and you might try your centered presence, your feet, your hands, your head, and your breath. You drop into the body, and you'll then go ahead and notice your experience. It may be the one you thought of, or it may be a different one. And you might locate it in the body. And then you might inhale right into it to a count of 4. And then the third step is to, can I accept or make space for this experience? Now, it could be yes or no. If you can't be with it, then just go to your feet or your hands. And the fourth is, can I allow the experience to be, to change, to not change, to move, to do whatever it does? So again, come back to the experience. Now, it may have changed a bit, or not. It may not be perceptibly changed. So just notice it, and then inhale to a count of 4 right into it. And hold to a count of 4. Again, can I make space for this? Can I accept it as it is? And then as you exhale, can I allow this experience to do whatever it does? Now, you may not be able to, but do your best and notice, are you able to? And if you can't, then you accept that. See, there's no outs here. Just accept your best efforts. So I'm going to be quiet, 10 seconds. And I'm going to give you a chance to take 2 breaths on your own, 2 or 3. Notice your experience, breathe into it. Can I accept it? Can I allow it to be just as it is? Okay. All right. So just coming back again, and I know we're kind of up against it. We have probably a few minutes here for questions or reactions. So, Adam, what do you have there?
Hey, Larry. Yeah, so first of all, these are powerful exercises that you're giving, and for those that are engaging in it, I can kind of envision and imagine some of the reactions. Some of the folks that are asking questions are that, they're noticing that it's a matter of taking the time to do this, Larry. Is that, and there's some questions about, in the design business, or if I'm an influencer and I'm charging, and this is the theme that we're seeing in the questions. I don't have a chance to reflect on a lot of the things that that you're bringing up, and that because life has slowed down a little bit, it's a little clearer to us what the answers to some of your questions are. What's your recommendations for people who are running busy lives and needing some of this along the way?
God, that's such a great question, such an important one. They don't call it business for no reason. It's constant, and you have to keep. Business is not for the faint of heart. It's constant, and you're having to keep adapt to new conditions. This is the reason I'm here, is because this is a particularly challenging one. But you may have noticed, if you do the centered presence, that doesn't take any time. You're breathing anyway. And actually, you can do that as you sit at your desk, or if you could take a walk, you can do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or just notice you're walking. You can beginning to incorporate it into your life and see what happens. That's what I would say. I was 50 now. I've been doing this about 30 years now, this practice. But I bet about 15 years into it, I was meditating and I was thinking, why am I doing this again? Why aren't I like learning how to speak French or play the guitar or something useful? Now that's just doubt, right? Now I don't do that now because I've gotten the benefits of it. So that the dance here is, and this is what we did in prison. This is what I did with my psychiatric patients. Check it out. This is what the Buddha said. The Buddha's a lot smarter than me. He said, don't take my word for it. Check it out. Try it. Try it in small ways. I'm planting a seed here. So you'll likely hear something on the radio, or you'll read something online, and then you'll think, oh, well, right? So not to worry. Just go forward in your life the best you can. But I think the touch points exercise and the centered presence exercise, this last one takes a little bit more time. Doesn't really take much time.
Yeah.
And see if it helps you.
Right. Larry, there's another group of reactions that were when you were asking about the things that trouble me and the things that I like to do and things like that. And I think the people were trying to understand how to bring the lessons from things that they like to do to the things that are challenging.
Great. Beautiful. See, thank you. Thank you so much for that, because these are quick hits. These are, it's like 45 minutes isn't a long time to introduce these things. So, but I would say that method has helped so many people. Now, if I work with one individual person, I'm yammering on about them, and it's much more personal. But the basic premise here is that when we're in things we like, we feel resourced, we feel strong. It's like some people love golf. Some people think, what a ridiculous thing, waste of time. It's aggravating. Why would I do that? But if somebody loves golf, then it's aggravating to them too, but they're willing to put up with that. That's true of anything that we invest in. So if we like it, then we feel a certain strength or resource in it. So I would say the invitation is just stay with that. Bring to mind something you like, and notice, well, what do I like about that? And then notice how you feel. And then if you anchor the experience, I like to just touch 2 fingers together, like that gives a little anchor. And then when you do that, it'll bring it right up. It'll bring up the experience. And then you can say you feel joyful when you're in the garden, right? Well, in New England in February, you're not in the garden, but if you bring it up, you're in that experience, and then you can bring that into your life.
Right. And Larry, one of the ways that I was thinking about was, this is something I've talked with you about, separately, is I love to fish. And
yes.
When I think about, all of the challenges that my business has gone through and the things that I've had to, and watching my family move through the entire thing, and watching designers reaching out and influencers changing their games and trying to figure out how to make sense of the problems that they've created. When I think about fishing, I'm dealing with 50 things every day that are problems. The wind's blowing, the tide's not right, that bait isn't working, the drift, the fish are feeding on this, not that, or whatever. But all of that is never unenjoyable because I enjoy that. But so for me, the lesson that I was thinking about just here was, for the way I move through things, but golf is one of them, except that I'm not good at any part of it. But, is that those lessons are really important, and they help you understand how you handle, and maybe I'm not saying this right, Larry, but how I handle controversy and the things that I like, and why is controversy and problems and things that I'm struggling with every day not as easy to overcome.
Right. Well, beautiful. I love your example, and hopefully it'll inspire other people or orient them. Your fishing example is great because it's a very challenging thing. There's the water, the waves, the fish, your experience, your ideas, but sometimes it doesn't work out, and you're baffled. But you love it, so you keep going, and you've solved many problems in fishing and taking people out on trips, whatever you do. So now, when you feel the power of that, it sounds like this is what you're talking about. You felt the power of the experience of solving a problem and being out in the wind and the waves. You are imbued with that, and then you were able to apply it to some of the business challenges.
Exactly.
Great, beautiful. That's the idea.
Yeah. So, those were the main groups of questions, Larry. I can't thank you enough for trying to bridge what you know and have worked through with so many people with the design crowd. Hopefully it was as powerful everybody else as I felt it was. So I want to thank you, Larry, and really appreciate it. And I hope we get to see a little bit more of you around here.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. And unfortunately, I didn't get to meet you all, but very good to be with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Larry.
Okay, bye-bye.